Hi.
Greetings. We wanted to do something with J.F. Rutherford's book, Creation, published in 1927, in the wake of the falling away of many Russellites, so-called, from the organization, the Watchtower. In the previous 10 years, there'd been a falling away right away after Rutherford's usurpation of Russell's position in 1917-18 period. But many had hung in there, but then were apparently scandalized by the Millions Now Living campaign and the disappointment, particularly when 1925 came and nothing happened that had been expected, like the coming back of the ancient worthies to occupy their place on the planet, and the Paradise Earth promise, which was the new part of the message, well, in its very first phase, the 1925 transition, had failed. So what was Rutherford's reaction to this? Well, at first he seemed to double down on the emphasis on Russell. Russell was still the faithful and discreet slave, according to the Society's publications, and in this book in particular, he re-emphasizes Russell's chronology. But I wanted to read you, first of all, the dedication and preface. 1927, copyrighted J.F. Rutherford, as a testimony to the name of God the Lord, the giver of every good and perfect gift, this book is dedicated. And the preface says, "It is with pleasure that the publisher presents to the people another book from the pen of Judge Rutherford. During the past 5 years, his books, published in 30 different languages, have reached a circulation exceeding 27 million volumes. It is probable that the writings of no other man on earth have a greater circulation. This book is published to aid the people to get a better understanding of their relationship to the great Creator. It aids you to acquire such knowledge. As a testimony to the name of Jehovah, and with the hope that this publication may benefit the people, it is confidently set forth." So it appears that Rutherford's claiming already that though his numbers now exceed those of Russell, there's still a continuity between Russell and Rutherford's work, and indeed his emphasis upon the time element, the chronology of Russell in this book is noteworthy. What did they believe in 1927? Keep in mind, this is 10 years in after the death of Charles Taze Russell. Rutherford says on page 289, "The scriptural proof is that the period of his presence and the day of God's preparation is a period from 1874 AD forward. The second coming of the Lord, therefore, began in 1874. And that date and the years 1914 to 1918 are specially marked dates with reference to his coming." And by the way, this is a chapter called Coming of the Lord. So Coming of the Lord was from 1874. On the next page, Rutherford goes on, from 1874 to 1914, the prophecy concerning the Lord's coming was being fulfilled and could be understood, and was understood by those who were faithful to the Lord and were watching the development of events, but not by others. Who are these others?
It is equally certain that the clergy would not understand these times and seasons, because they form a part of Satan's organization, to wit, the ecclesiastical part. They love the plaudits and approval of men, and give themselves titles, such as D.D.
Doctor of Divinity.
God foreknew and foretold through his prophet that they would thus do, and that they would be so concerned with these worldly things that they could not understand. All along they have claimed that no one could understand about the presence of the Lord, because they claim that the book is sealed. God foretold this very condition concerning them. To understand the events concerning the Lord's second presence from 1874 to 1914 requires one to be spiritually minded, and the clergy are not spiritually minded.
So is that clear? The clergy are denounced and even condemned for not accepting the doctrine of the second presence from 1874 onward. And then on the next page, we go deeper into Russell's chronology is now being emphasized by Rutherford at this late date. When did the time of the end actually begin? Another thing, by the way, denied by the clergy, we find out later. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. That is the king of the north. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots, and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. This is all from Daniel 11:40-41, and it's interesting that now Watchtower's back into this text and speculating again about who the king of the north and the king of the south are. Rutherford goes on, the fulfillment of this prophecy fixes the beginning of the time of the end for the prophecy definitely. The prophecy definitely so states the campaign of the great warrior Napoleon Bonaparte is clearly a fulfillment of this prophecy, as reference to the historical facts concerning his campaign plainly shows. The king of the south mentioned in this prophecy refers to Egypt, and he goes on with the details. King of the north, Great Britain. At the end, the campaign is briefly yet graphically described in the prophecy, verses 40-44, and it's being completed in 1799, marks, according to the prophet's own words, the beginning of the time of the end. Then on the next page, 294, again, 1799 definitely marks the beginning of the time of the end. Well, then he gets to what proves that 1799 was the beginning of the time of the end, beyond the campaign of Napoleon, and he draws attention to Daniel 12:4, which is, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.
When that time should arrive, what was to be expected? Jehovah answers, many will run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. From shortly after 1799, the date of the beginning of the time of the end, we should expect to find an increase of knowledge, particularly with reference to the Bible. A short time thereafter, the first Bible societies that ever existed were organized. The British and Foreign Bible Society was established in 1803. The New York Bible Society in 1804. The Berlin Prussian Bible Society in 1805. The Philadelphia Bible Society in 1808, and the American Bible Society in 1817. The Bible was translated and published in many different languages and sold at such low prices that the poor could have access to it. And within a short time, millions of Bibles were in the hands of the people. The papal system denounced these Bible societies as, how do you say that?
Pestiferous?
Yeah, pestiferous Bible societies. What, pests? Okay. The time had come, however, for an increase of knowledge, and the Lord was fulfilling his promise by putting the Bibles within the reach of those who were hungry for truth. From that time forward, there has been great corresponding increase of knowledge in all lines of learning. The common school, always opposed by the papacy, has afforded a means of general education and increase of knowledge for people in all walks of life. Colleges and universities have sprung up throughout the earth. With the increase of knowledge on various lines have come the numerous inventions that man now has, time-saving and labor-saving machines, etc. I think it's interesting that they would denounce the clergy a couple pages before. But who do they think came up with these Bible societies?
The same denominations.
That produce these men that are not spiritually minded?
And that goes for the schools he's mentioning as worthy of praise and a sign of the last days. The schools, the universities, the colleges, who do we think were behind those movements for mass education?
Right.
Oftentimes it was the same clergy and denominations that are now denounced as being outside the plan of God. Then he has some other proofs that we're in the last days. Again, back to the Daniel 12:4 text about people running to and fro and knowledge being increased. He says, before 1799, the means of transportation was such that a man could travel only a short distance in a day. He must go either in a vehicle drawn by horses or oxen or afoot. And when he would cross the sea, he must go in a sailboat that made slow progress. In 1803, the steamboat was invented. In 1831, the first locomotive steam engine was built. Such wonderful progress has been made in this regard that now one can travel through almost any part of the earth at a rapid rate upon land or sea. Later came the electric engines and electric motor cars and gas engines, and now there's a tremendous amount of travel in every part of the earth. It is no uncommon thing for one to travel at the rate of 75 to 100 miles an hour. And particularly is this true by means of the flying machine, which is a modern invention. The common people have always been downtrodden and kept in subjection to the financial, ecclesiastical, and political princes. It was in the year 1874, the date of our Lord's second presence, that the first labor organization in the world was created. From that time forward, there has been a marvelous increase of light, and the inventions and discoveries have been too numerous to mention here. But mention is made of some of those things that have come to light since 1874, as a further evidence of the Lord's presence since that date, as follows. And this is just a list. Adding machines, aeroplanes, aluminum, antiseptic surgery, artificial dyes, automatic couplers, automobiles, barbed wire, bicycles, carborundum, cash registers, celluloid, cream separators, disc plows, electric railways, electric welding, elevators, escalators, fireless cookers, gas engines, harvesting machines, illuminating gas, induction motors, linotypes, monotypes, motion pictures, pasteurization, radium, railway signals, Röntgen rays, skyscrapers, smokeless powder, submarines, subways, talking machines, telephones, television, typewriters, vacuum cleaners, wireless telegraphy, and wireless telephony. That's a word I hadn't heard before. So all of these things prove, according to the logic of Russell before Rutherford, we should note, and now 10 years past Russell, all of these things prove the chronology is undoubtedly right. That is, that from 1874, Christ has been invisibly present, and from 1799, we've been in the last days, or the time of the end.
I can remember laughing when I read that list the first time, way back when we were leaving, and we read that. And I think those pages should be enough to discourage us from interpreting events in history, of our own history, as proof of anything. And yet people still do it.
Well,
with better proof than egg beaters and...
I think beyond the mistaken chronology and the mistaken proofs of the chronology is the dogmatism that bothered me the most. And I think it really hit you hard. The arrogance of not only their assertion about the light that's on them in this aspect, but everybody else is in the dark. And that way of looking at the world goes right back to the days of Russell and Barber, before the Watchtower existed.
When they change things, they do not go back and say, well, I guess you guys had more understanding, more light. We're spiritually minded and we weren't. They don't go back and say that. They just double down and give us new proofs.
I've never read an apology to the clergy who denounced the second presence as being a false teaching, who are then denounced in turn in here. I've never seen an apology to them for having superior light. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to link to videos that we started, a playlist called What Has Christ Been Doing These 2,000 Years? We've started with This Freedom Whence by John Wesley Brady, and Brady is talking about what Christendom was doing all this time, including a lot of this stuff that isn't accredited here. to clergy or to the denominations of Christendom. What has been happening in Christendom all the time that you think God was preparing for you? So the stress of Brady's book is that the developments of the next 2 centuries, including the Bible societies, are fruits of the descendants of the Puritans. Puritan England around the time of Queen Elizabeth and the next 2 or 3 generations after that. Also a book we want to link on the best books on Bible prophecy.